Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about Gen Z being very nostalgic for a decade they did not bear witness to. That would be the 1980s. For some reason, Gen Z is fascinated with the 1980s. There are lots of pages and posts popping up, presumably by Gen Z or Gen Alpha persons.
Or it could be even like the late millennials too. It could be them as well.
But they're getting everything wrong.
They are.
They're getting it all wrong.
This, and that's what triggered this video. I keep seeing this stuff. We're going to talk about some different things we've seen. But I keep seeing these things pop up. And they're like, but that's not what happened. That's not what happened at all. We were there. No. And it's like this retcon version of what the 80s were, because that's what Gen Z was either told, or these people were told, or they want to believe.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about it because there's a lot being said about. We've covered before that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are pining for malls. Unfortunately, you're way too late to the party. Most of them have closed.
Hey, I wish they'd come back too. So it's not just you.
Me
but
too.
So.
But
I'd
even now we're seeing all these retailers collapse. We're talking about Joann and Big Lots and.
Oh yeah, Michael's apparently is buying a bunch of Joann stuff, and if you go to the Joann Fabrics website, you go to Michael's page. So it's really weird.
So we're gonna look into this a little bit more and see if we can't figure out what is going on. Here's another one that you sent over from. There's a YouTube channel out there.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about it, and I feel like the whole channel's AI with AI scripts, and they're getting things wrong. So before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. You'll get woohoo if you do.
Woohoo.
We are not AI, and yes, we were both around in the 1980s. We do remember it very well. Everything had a lot more wood paneling and a lot more cigarette staining.
Yeah, not at my house though, because my house we didn't do cigarettes. But yeah.
Okay, my house, a lot more wood paneling and a lot more cigarette stains.
Yeah, we had the wood paneling. My dad thought, like, he got a bunch of old barnwood once and decided to put the walls in barnwood, which was a great plan until you have kids that fall into the walls.
Yeah.
Talk about splinters.
Yikes. All right. So, there's this one YouTube channel, and they keep coming up in recommendations. You're watching them the other day.
Yeah, they had a gem one, and I don't think we're not naming names, are we?
No, I don't want to put them on blast.
Okay, I don't put them on blast, but they keep doing these these retrospectives about different things that happened in the 80s and about different shows and stuff. And I didn't watch. They have a Transformers one, a G.I. Joe one, and stuff. I saw the Gem one. I didn't watch the other ones. And this comments from the Transformers one. But the Gem one, I could tell you for a fact from the beginning, they called Shayna like Shauna, Aja was AJ, and they called Jerica Jessica a couple times. And they were talking about how but different things that happened. Some of the stuff was pretty close. But then they went on again, and we keep hearing this narrative that, it was because they wanted to sell toys. It's like, yeah, of course they wanted to sell toys. They keep acting like that's a bad thing. The reason these brands are still beloved today and still around decades later is because of people's connection to them, because it wasn't just on one facet. It wasn't just a show you watched and moved on to something else. It was involved in your life. It was a show. Yeah. It was toys you wanted. It was Christmas memories, birthday memories, other event memories where you got these toys and then playing with your siblings or playing with your friends. And it's like when you teach something, you need to approach it on different ways, not just one way, to make it more personal to the students, and then they'll remember it more. That's why we still love this stuff to the day. It has nothing to do with the fact that they were cheap ass toy commercials.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird, and it was by design. They're like, you were being manipulated by marketers. It was like, oh, shut up, just shut up.
I was a little kid. I don't care.
But little things they got wrong. I mean, I was skipping around the Transformers one. I'm like, well, that's wrong, and that's wrong. And this is very well documented. This is wrong. Don't
you know, Gem, the movie failed because everybody was mad about them making Shayna lighter skinned.
Yeah,
they eventually mentioned it's because it sucked, but people didn't like it because it sucked. But their first go to was, guys, it failed because they tried to whitewash Shayna. It's like, no, that's not why it failed.
Yeah, that's not why it failed. So let's talk about this. There's a couple different articles out there. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. I know this is true though, because like we said before in another video that the playlist on at least the local radio station, and I think it's piped in from someplace else, but at least the one pop station, most of the playlist is 80s, 90s stuff, and it's actually getting more airplay now, 30, 40 years later, than it did back in the day. Like
look at all the band t-shirts at Walmart. They're all like Foreigner and stuff like that, Billy Joel and things like that from the 80s or even 70s. and sometimes the 90s, and they're selling these these retro shirts like crazy to these kids that, that's what they listen to now.
They think that a lot of it's coming from TikTok.
No, it is. I know it is,
yeah.
because our kids have told me, like, well, why is Billy Joel, for example, so popular again? It's because of TikTok. They were using his songs and videos. That's why TikTok is like the regeneration tool for elderly 80s bands at this point in time.
This article had to have been written by Gen Z or AI anyway. Speaking of which,
you can't tell the difference.
Because it said, oh yeah, some of the most popular clips come from More Than a Woman, a classic tune from the iconic 1960s era pop group, the Bee Gees. 1960s, 70s.
Yeah, 70s. And every time I hear that song, you know what I think of? I think of a Short Circuit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which was the 80s.
Well, they're saying they think Stranger Things definitely had a part in it, because they're watching these kids that are their age but in the 80s, and plot twist, those kids actually would be older than us today given how old they were in the show.
Yes. They'd be boomers.
They'd be like 55 probably now, I'm guessing.
I don't know, but they get a lot right, but they get a lot wrong, or they combine a lot. That's the thing, like, it's sanitized. A lot of it's combined into, we have like things from 5 or 6 years of the 80s combined into like one thing. And so it's not really the whole experience, but they think it is. So they think they know everything. It's like, that didn't know. Mm-mm.
Yeah. It's weird too, because I remember reading somewhere about Stranger Things that they actually have Winona Ryder on set to go in and like correct things, and little things like that irritate the shit out of me, because I'm like, really, when it comes to 80s toys, like, I'm a complete like,
God, he's like a walking encyclopedia. It's
I don't know why. I just have like an encyclopedic
the pony. So what color bow did this one have? And sometimes he actually knows.
I don't even know.
Not always, though.
I know the accessories to G.I. Joes,
That's
Transformers, card backs. Years the stuff was released. It's weird.
But Squid King does that too, but he does it with Godzilla. Like, you can show him like part of like a toe of a toy, and he knows exactly what the character is. It's weird.
I'm not as good at it as I used to be, but back when we used to deal more in toys, like online, like I could literally look at a part of something in a bag and be like, well, that's to this, and that's a gun to this, and which is weird. I don't even know why I know that. Anyway, because I'm a loser. They would get things wrong and it'd drive me nuts. Like Stranger Things, they had Ultra Magnus in 1985. I'm like, no, Ultra Magnus.
To be fair, most of us wouldn't catch that.
Yeah, but I'm like, no. He came out in the spring of 86. And then
it's like I said, most of us wouldn't catch that.
And then I think it was chapter 2. They were playing Mortal Kombat in 1989. I'm like, bitch, please. It was 1992. Most people didn't play it till like
that one's a bigger oopsie.
That was a big oopsie-doopsie.
That's a more well-known time jump there, but then like a few months. Kneon.
The man in the moon. Was it Man in the Moon? The Andy Kaufman, the one with Jim Carrey.
Yeah, I never watched it, but yes.
He was like playing Ms. Pac-Man in like 1980. And I'm like, no, that wouldn't have happened. Little things like that irritate the piss out of me, right?
He does. See, it's setting him off already.
Because I'm like very basic. Like, if you're, I guess my thing is like, if you're not,
I said his name. Anyway,
if you're not, that's okay. Everybody knows my name. If you're not, if you're gonna base a whole scene off of it, which is what they do sometimes. Oh yeah, and they're playing, I think, Street Fighter 1 2-player or something, and I don't know, in it. But like, if you're gonna base the entire scene off of it, you got to make sure the damn thing actually existed. Like, oh, like, golly gee, guys, we're playing Ninja Turtles 1984.
Okay, calm down.
Well, I'm just
back to the point.
Anyway, we were there.
So we keep seeing these things. Okay, pull up the Nintendo one. We keep seeing these things happening, and it's enough that we're starting to be like, wait a minute. And a lot of them are like retconning things or talking about stuff that like they don't even get it right, or like that shit didn't happen or whatever. This is I love this one. Millions of 80s kids unknowingly damaged Nintendo games by blowing into cartridges. This popular fix actually sped up corrosion due to moisture, while a faulty NES connector was the true problem.
Yes.
Meanwhile, those games still run today. Yeah. And a lot of times my dad used to get these and fix them. It was because he'd have to change the connector because the connector was bad, but the games were fine. And I guarantee you all of them are blown on. I know.
Sorry. No, I mean, yeah, it's just so weird. It's like, because now it's become this trope of like, you blow on the cartridge. Actually, you know what I did? I used a pencil eraser
Yeah, you told me
to
that.
clean the connectors. And that trick came from my uncle who used to refurbish arcade machines and pinball machines back in the day. He's like, it is a connector problem, but like just blowing it's not going to work. You get yourself a good eraser, needed eraser, and erase it.
Yeah,
And
that can be the fact, but a lot of people blew them out, and they blew them years ago, and those things still work. Okay, I was like, they blow them.
get blown in the 80s.
Neil starts laughing and losing it. They still work today. Like it's more likely than not, if you buy a retro cartridge, it's going to work. It's very unlikely it doesn't. There's some that don't, but most often, if you go to buy one, back to Atari, they're gonna work.
Yeah, I mean, we found some nasty ass Atari cartridges, and with a little TLC and a little rubbing alcohol, they work.
If you rub them and blow them, they're fine.
They start right up. Who cares if they're old? They still got it. The only one I need to really look at is Pinky Boo bought me a Kirby's 64 from Blockbuster. It actually had the Blockbuster label on it.
Well, that's part of the problem right there.
Yeah, and I can't get that one work. I need to probably take the whole thing apart. Somebody could, for all we knew, somebody could submerged it in water or something. Anyway,
but
there's a lot of this shit.
They go through this, but we're not pulling the rest of it up. But the comments on it are like what I said. I have all my original cartridges. I blew on all of them multiple times, and they all still work. And it's just like, I get it, but we keep seeing these things, and I think they're authorities on the 80s. It's like, but you're not.
Yeah, it's weird. And we were talking about earlier before we did this video. I know this is a little bit different because usually we cover like the news, but being 80s kids, it's kind of irritating because like I never would have thought to, lecture my parents or grandparents on the 1950s or 60s because I wasn't there.
No, I don't remember
fascinated by it.
I don't remember us being as fascinated by that. You had, like, you said Back to the Future, like the 50s, and they had Happy Days and stuff like that. But it wasn't like you were fixated on it, like they're fixated on the 80s. I mean, so much so that they're going back, even the 90s, the 80s and 90s. That's why these shows from the 80s and 90s are going back and watching them over and over again and all this other stuff because they're fixated on them.
Yeah, it's, I don't know if it's like they're pining for something that I mean, look, things were pretty awesome back then, but I can tell you a lot of the kids today would not make it back then because nobody knew where anybody else was. Nobody was at arm's length.
We weren't on the phone 24/7.
Yeah, you weren't. If you were gonna say something shitty to somebody, you had to do it to their faces. You couldn't do it over the internet.
You had to learn how to fight.
You had to learn how to fight.
You had to be outside for hours, without like your air conditioning and your game systems. Even though we had game systems too, later on, well, the whole way through the 80s. But the ones for home that everybody bought was mostly Nintendo, and that was later. Thing is, you went outside, you played in the sprinklers, you played outside most of the day.
Yeah.
That was what it was.
Hose. I mean, I know it's really cliche, but we actually did. We actually drank from the hose.
Right.
And I still can taste it. Oh my God, that's gonna be the next thing you're gonna sell to Gen Z is like bottled hose water.
Oh my God!
Did you see that? And they'll sell it on TikTok, and it'll be like $10 a bottle for bottled hose water.
I was just thinking how scratch and sniff stickers would break them because we used to remember we used to collect all the stickers. Yeah. Like they had the sticker albums, and like I'm even seeing jewelry coming back that they're do you remember the bracelets the girls have with all the charms on it? They do those again. Is this funny to me? Thankfully, jelly shoes. No, jelly shoes. They did try to make them return. They did, but I don't think it worked well. Crocs.
Didn't they like Crocs burn people's feet or something? I thought
they didn't burn them, but they blister the hell out of you.
It's just plastic. It's just like, I mean, I guess we have Crocs now, and it's the same. No, they're not real shoes.
See, our kids, they do a lot of 80s stuff. They have a lot of 80s stuff. But the difference is because they grew up with us who were already like collecting that stuff as it was. Like Pinky Boo has a bunch of strawberry shortcakes from the 80s. And she she has some of the Avon jewelry from the 80s and stuff that I had and stuff. So it wasn't like there's no connection. But there's a lot of these people, and I'm not saying they didn't get that from their parents, they probably did. But there's a huge fascination with the 80s and the 90s, which is cool. I love it. Bring it, because it means more 80s and 90s stuff for all of us, right? It's a win. It's just that when they try to lecture you or be the authority on something and they're calling Jerica Jessica and Aja AJ, that I have a big problem,
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like you said before, like I don't remember it being this way because like I used to watch a lot of older TV shows with my grandfather. And I remember, we used to watch Honeymooners every night. It'd come out like 11 o'clock at night. We watched, reruns of that or whatever. But like, I don't ever remember myself being like, gosh, I wish I could live in the 1950s. Actually, you tell me about what we didn't have in the 1950s. And I'd be like, wow, that sucks.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I can confirm that all that the records are back and all the music and all that stuff is like our kids listen to a crap ton of stuff from the 80s. I have stuff they used to make fun of my music, and now I'll play my music and they'll be like, oh, I like that one. And I'm like, oh, I have one you like now? Okay, it's a miracle. But they like a lot of the stuff that's 70s, 80s, 90s. I would say they prefer that stuff. And it's just funny to me because I'll be like, I remember that was on the radio,
Yeah, I think well, they're calling it pseudo nostalgia. And this reminds me of, again, Ready Player One, where we're living in this perpetual time warp where it's basically just a pastiche of like all the greatest pop culture. But I think a lot of it, and this goes back to what we talked about before on the channel, that like it doesn't feel like, other than like the Minecraft movie, it doesn't feel like there's been like a pop culture moment for today's generation. It feels like they're longing for that, because like every damn year, like you could look at the 80s, you could look at the way somebody was dressed, what they're listening to, and you could pinpoint exactly what year it is. And I can't tell the difference between, and I thought it was just because I'm getting old, but apparently that's not what's happening. But I can't tell the difference between what's hot in 2022 and what was hot in 2012. Like it's all.
No, see, I can tell a difference when it comes to fashion stuff. There's definitely a difference.
But it hasn't changed that dramatic. You know what I'm saying? Like the 70s to the 80s is like, oh my God. And then the 80s to the 90s is like, oh my God. Then you get to the 2000s and it's kind of like variations of
2 or 3 years in the 80s, and it was a huge difference. I don't think it doesn't change as fast. It was a very, like I'd say 70s to the 90s were like decades of innovation, change, progressiveness as far as like, technology and things like that. And we had lots of different movements for music and fashion and everything. And it was very distinctive. But we don't really have that now. It kind of blends together. But I think that they hear the stories about the malls. They see when they listen to the old music, and then they go watch the old shows and movies, and then they're obsessed with things that no longer exist, like the malls for the most part. Even though there are still some malls, and Ross Park Mall's doing fine in Pittsburgh.
Ross Park Mall is okay, yeah. But yeah, that's it. They call it pseudo nostalgia. They're pining for something they never experienced, because they think that the reason Stranger Things actually kind of kicked it off was, again, they had a story and they could actually see. It wasn't just like, oh, pictures in a book or pictures on the internet or whatever, or somebody's, family videos. It's like, oh, here's a story of these kids living in the 80s, and look, they're going to the mall. Like, yeah, but they're also.
It's kids like us, and I wish we could do that too, kind of situation.
Yeah, but I'm also like, I don't know if you could hack it.
I mean, I will tell you. Lately, I'm starting to see more kids on bikes running around, which is really kind of good to see, because back in the day, everybody was riding bikes everywhere, and it was like the thing to do. And then, I was saying way before, like my mom's time and everything else, everybody was riding bikes everywhere. And you haven't seen that in a while. Well, now we're starting to see more and more kids come out with bikes again and riding around. And I was like, oh, I don't like the fact they're cutting cars off, but I love seeing it. The bike's not the cutting off cars.
Yeah. No, that was weird. Like I never even noticed that kids on bikes disappeared for a while. Like and then when we had the power outage for a couple days, I saw kids playing outside, kids at the park.
Like it used to be.
Like it
I
used
think
to
that's
be.
what they see. They see this like connection with their friends, and that's where I think D&D and that started upswing again. They see these connections and these things, and they're like, well, what's that? I wish I had that too. And especially, it started before the pandemic for Stranger Things, but I think the pandemic probably amplified it, where you're like, I want to have that connection again. I just don't think that these kids know how. So they want that to come back so they can have that, but they wouldn't even know how to deal with it. They did have it. And so now they're just like in their mind romanticizing lots of different things or combining things. And it was the stupid thing to get, like, be nitpicky about. Because like I said, the good news is we get a lot of cool stuff back. But it's also just so damn annoying when you have some like 23-year-old trying to tell you, why this is this and that is that, and She-Ra is this and Jem is that. I know. And why, toys they were just toy commercials back then and all this other stuff. And it's like, no, yes and no. Yes, but no, and they just don't understand it. So it's just hilarious to me. But they love everything we love. And the fashions right now are 90s. And it's just like 80s and 90s. And they're just like, what do you know, Mom? Well, our kids don't do that, but,
No, they know we know what we're talking about.
we'll go through the stores and I'll be like, oh yeah, I had that, and that. Like as far as clothes are concerned, I'm like, my sister wore that, and that, and stuff like that. So it's just.
It's really interesting. It's cool to see, but I'm also afraid that like, are we ever going to move forward again?
That's what we're not. We're stuck because Hollywood and pop culture and the media, things that would normally help move that stuff along, are so fixated on just repeating everything that's already been done because it's easy and they guaranteed money. They thought, so they ruined it.
Yeah. So I don't know, just interesting. We're gonna see more and more of this, but I think we're gonna get a lot more fake 80s kids coming out. We should
do videos, like not necessarily on this channel, but we were talking about it. We should do videos like on a Substack or something where we talk about what it was actually like to be in the 80s. So if you're a Gen Z person, Gen Alpha, or late, like somebody who wasn't around then, you could actually hear what it was actually like, what we actually thought about events when we were there living them. We should do that.
Everything smelled like cigarettes in Genesee where I lived.
That's not what it sounds. In my house,
in Genesee.
My house, it was usually, because we lived in the country, it was usually the fresh air coming in, or it was cow manure from the fields being. I didn't grow up on a farm, but there was farms around us, and they were always
like shit.
They smelled like shit, pretty much. It still does sometimes if you go at the right time of day around the fields.
People didn't smell as good back then. I can tell you that. They didn't have as many different kinds of soaps.
No, we had Stetson.
Oh my God, I forgot about Stetson.
Remember what they had for girl? They had exclamation. That was more the 90s though.
Yeah.
Loves Baby Soft.
Yeah, it was a different time. We had Zest.
Aquanet.
My house, we had Zest. That was it. That was the only soap that I until I swear to God, I was like 15, 16 years old. The only soap I knew was Zest.
They had Dial.
But we bought Zest by the crate full. Like there was like so much Zest.
They had Olay then. And then was that Cam A?
Cam A. Yeah.
I only remember that one because I used to mock me because it sounds similar to my name.
Smash the... That's your fancy French name when you went to France.
Cam A. They used to make jokes about it because my name is similar.
Geek A.
Geek A, yeah. That's my name. That's a child. It's Geeky. It looks like God in first grade. And anyway, we're going to wrap this up.
Yeah, honestly, honest to God, we probably could go for like hours.
I'm saying we should probably do video segments about different shows, about different, what it was actually like to go to the store, to go shopping for Ben Cooper Halloween costumes.
I did that.
Most of us did that.
We all did that. And that smell, that smell.
You'll always remember that smell.
That vinyl, fresh Ben Cooper vinyl.
Okay, whenever to this day, whenever I smell like the vinyl thing, like, I immediately think of the Halloween costumes.
There you go. All right, we're going to wrap it up.
Yep.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, we'll talk later.
Bye.